Today's lesson is, can your supper spoil your sleep? Hello, everyone. I'm Mike.
I'm Roger.
And the answer to that question from what we learned yesterday is, well, if your supper consisted of a cheese board and a bunch of yogurt or butter or ice cream or a big thick milkshake, yes, that can spoil your sleep because, of course, if you have lactose intolerance or even if your stomach has a little bit of trouble digesting dairy products or dairy foods, things made from milk like, cheese, cream, butter, and ice cream, along with milk, of course, it can cause an upset stomach, and that will definitely interrupt your sleep. Will it cause the bad dreams, though, of folk wisdom, avoid cheese before bed or you'll have nightmares? Well, not so much, but I would rather have nightmares and a good night's sleep than have, just a few hours of sleep because my stomach is angry with me because I ate the wrong food. So, yes, be aware of your stomach and the little weaknesses you might have to certain dishes, certain food items, and try to avoid those before you go to sleep. And to that list today, we will be adding a few other things.
Indeed, these results are consistent with other recent data showing that foods which stress your digestive system are best avoided near bedtime if you want to get a good night's rest. Spicy foods, for example, have been shown to negatively affect sleep, largely due to the fact that they often cause indigestion. At night, this can be particularly bad as lying down allows stomach acid to rise more easily into the throat. Needless to say, the pain that results is hardly conducive to sweet dreams.
大家好，第一部分介绍形容词 consistent 指一致的、一贯的或是始终如一的。例如 With consistent rainfall expected in the coming days, it's advisable to bring umbrellas whenever you go out. 由于未来几天预计会持续下雨，建议外出时都要携带雨伞。或者 The consistent quality of their products has earned them a loyal customer base. 他们产品一贯的品质为他们赢得了一群忠实的客户。下一个看到形容词 digestive 意思是消化系统的。例如 Arthur had an infection in his digestive system. Arthur 的消化系统受到感染了。再看一个例句 Eating too much spicy food can cause problems for your digestive system. 吃太多辛辣的食物可能会对你的消化系统造成问题。接下来看到形容词 spicy 指辛辣的或是加香料的。例如 Some people enjoy eating spicy food, while others find it too intense. 有些人喜欢吃辛辣的食物，而其他人则觉得味道太强烈。或是 These chicken wings are so spicy that you'll want to drink something cool after every bite. 这些鸡翅辣到你会想在吃完每一口后喝点冰的饮料。再来看到名词 acid， 它的意思是酸。例如Your stomach contains acid that helps it break down food. 你的胃含有帮助分解食物的酸性物质。也可以说 Lemon juice contains an acid that gives it a sour flavor. 柠檬汁含有一种赋予其酸味的酸性物质。
Okay, here in the first part, again, we're talking about the results of those studies here. So, indeed, these results are consistent with other recent data showing that foods which stress your digestive system are best avoided near bedtime if you want to get a good night's rest. Okay, so we got the results of consuming cheese or other dairy products before going to bed. So these results are pretty much the same as other recent data. So if something is consistent, it stays the same over time. And the opposite, of course, is inconsistent. If you keep telling people that you don't like to eat pizza, and one time, maybe last year, you had pizza, well, you're not being consistent. Okay, you're being inconsistent. You're not being the same as you said you were. So in this particular case, the results are pretty much the same with all these other types of research. We've got recent information or recent data that shows foods which stress your digestive system should be avoided before going to bed. Okay, so digestive here just has to do with your digestive system, your stomach, and your intestines. That's when you put food in your body and your body changes it or breaks it down into something that the body can use. Now, this word is usually pronounced digestive, but when we speak fast, I think we tend to say digestive. My digestive system, we kind of skip over that I sound.
All right, so let's look at some of these foods that might be best avoided near bedtime if you want to get a good night's rest. It says spicy foods, for example, have been shown to negatively affect sleep, largely due to the fact that they often cause indigestion. I don't think this is probably a big shock to anyone out there. Yeah, spicy foods are definitely, they put a bit of a strain on your digestive system, your stomach, and all the parts that are connected to that. They can definitely cause stomach upset and indigestion. Indigestion is just when you're having trouble digesting the food. It goes into your stomach, but it doesn't seem to be very happy there. And of course, it might cause all sorts of problems when you go to the bathroom or when you're trying to lie down. And as we're going to see, that can definitely be a factor with some spicy foods, along with other things that can be a little bit harder to digest. It says at night, this can be particularly bad as lying down allows stomach acid to rise more easily into the throat. So here we're focusing on spicy foods, foods that are made hot in flavor, not in temperature, but in flavor due to the spices that have been added to them. Now, not all spices are spicy. We can talk about spices like cinnamon that you might add to a cake or to your coffee, but it's not really a spicy spice because spicy things are things that create that feeling of heat in your mouth due to the capsaicin often that are inside the seeds and the flesh of the different peppers that you might have. So chili peppers, hot food, food from India, Thailand, Mexican food is often known to be quite spicy. Or maybe you like a spicy hot pot that are made with those Sichuan peppercorns. But all of this can be very delicious, but it can be a little bit of a challenge for your stomach, especially if you haven't had a few hours to allow your stomach, your digestive system, to do its job. And it says at night, this can be particularly bad as lying down allows stomach acid to rise more easily into the throat. And that would be what we would call acid reflux or heartburn.
Right, of course. Acid, of course, is the opposite of alkaline or base, and that's bad. It can burn things. So the stomach acid, which normally breaks down food in your stomach, could actually go up your esophagus all the way up to your throat. And, of course, it's very difficult to sleep if you have that sensation in your throat. Needless to say, or obviously, we don't need to say this because it's so obvious, it's so clear, the pain that results is hardly conducive to sweet dreams. Okay, so if something is conducive, it makes something easy to happen. Okay, it creates a situation more likely to happen. So yeah, it's not conducive to sweet dreams. So yeah, avoid spicy food before you go to bed. So if you're having your 宵夜 or your midnight snack, try to avoid spicy food. That might be difficult here in Taiwan because lots of foods here are quite spicy or even picante, which means very spicy. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now to the second part.
Similarly bad for sleep are high-energy foods like bread and rice, as well as sugar-filled treats such as chocolate or ice cream. These cause your blood sugar levels to rise rapidly, which actually restricts the body's ability to produce the chemicals that ease the transition into sleep. The result is often many hours of tossing and turning.
第二部分介绍名词 transition 表示过渡或是转换。例如 The transition from high school to university can be challenging for some students. 对一些学生来说，从高中到大学的过渡可能具有挑战性。或是 The transition between seasons often brings unpredictable weather. 季节之间的转变通常会带来难以预测的天气。
All right, we are back looking at foods to avoid if you want to get a good night's sleep. Yesterday, we tackled the idea of cheese and related dairy products. Today, we've already learned that spicy foods are another thing to avoid. If you plan to sleep within a few hours of eating a spicy snack, you might find your stomach is not very happy with you. Lying down allows acid to rise up into your throat. That can cause a burning, painful sensation, and it can definitely interrupt your sleep by just making you quite quite uncomfortable. So avoid spicy foods. What else? Let's move on. It says similarly bad for sleep are high energy foods like bread and rice, as well as sugar-filled treats such as chocolate or ice cream. Ooh, okay, well, now we're getting a little closer to things that people might not know about. Bread and rice are high energy foods. All their carbohydrates in those are great for fueling your body during the daytime. Having a piece of toast for breakfast or a bowl of rice for lunch in the afternoon can definitely give you some energy. But you don't want to have that energy in your body when you're trying to sleep, do you? In the same way, I think most of us would know, don't drink coffee before you go to sleep because the caffeine can keep you awake. Well, bread and rice can do something similar, although in a different way. It can definitely keep you awake. Great before you go to the gym, maybe. Not so great before you want to sleep. As well as sugar-filled treats such as chocolate or ice cream. I know some people who'd like to have a little bit of chocolate or ice cream before bed. Maybe having dark chocolate would be a little bit better. Of course, chocolate also often has milk chocolate, and that could get into what we talked about yesterday. Ice cream too, dairy products. These are things you might want to avoid. But the sweetness of these dishes, these food items, is also part of the problem. As it says, they cause your blood sugar levels to rise rapidly, which actually restricts the body's ability to produce the chemicals that ease the transition into sleep. So not only are you filled with energy from the sugar or other things in some of these foods, but it actually stops your body from releasing the calming chemicals that can lead to you feeling sleepy and having a good night's sleep. That is very interesting.
Yep, it puts a limit on or keeps something under control. It restricts the body's ability to produce those chemicals that help you with your transition into sleep, the change from one state to another, the state of being awake to the state of being asleep. That's a transition. And the result is often many hours of tossing and turning. I think we've all experienced that. We just can't get to sleep. There are various reasons for that. Of course, here we're talking about the effect of diet on the quality of sleep. But there are also other factors, like maybe it's too hot. It's very difficult to sleep during the summer, for example, without the AC turned on. You're going to be tossing and turning. Or if you're worried about something, you got a big exam the next day, or you have to give a big presentation at the office the next day, you might be kind of tensed out because of that, or stressed out because of that, and you'll be tossing and turning. Tossing and turning, of course, is when you're trying to get to sleep and you keep changing positions. You try it on your side. How about on your back? Now on the left side, now on the front. Separate your legs a little bit to put them together or whatever. Fluff up the pillow or something. Yeah, you're tossing and turning all night because you can't really get to sleep. And indeed, this is a result of eating things that are too sweet before you go to bed. Again, bread and rice and sugar-filled treats. Okay, that brings us to the end of the second part of our lesson for today. Here comes the third and final part.
A good rule of thumb, then, is this. If you must eat before bed, keep it light. A few nuts, a slice or two of lean meat, or even just a glass of herbal tea will give your body the best chance to relax, allowing you to sink into a deep, peaceful sleep.
第三部分看到形容词 lean 指瘦的、精简的。在课文中 lean meat 指瘦肉。我们可以说 Wendy prefers to eat lean meat because it is healthier than meat with a lot of fat. Wendy 偏好吃瘦肉，因为这比含有很多油脂的肉来得健康。又或者说 Most long-distance runners are extremely lean, likely due to the massive amounts of calories that they burn. 多数的长跑者极为纤瘦，也许是因为他们燃烧了大量的卡路里。最后看到 herbal 这个形容词的意思是药草的或是香草的。例如 Tina drinks herbal tea every night to help her sleep. Tina 每晚喝药草茶来帮助入睡。最后一个句子 The herbal lotion soothes dry and itchy skin. 该款草本乳液能舒缓干痒的肌肤。
All right, let's move into the final paragraph of our article here. We've learned a lot of good advice and busted a few folk wisdom myths from the past about what to eat before you go to sleep. It's been very useful. In fact, the last paragraph especially was some of the more common things. As a kid, I think we used to have like a glass of milk and a cookie before we went to bed, and both of those things might actually be bad for your sleep. Now, of course, as a child, your digestive system is probably a little tougher than a person who's slightly older, but the lactose in the milk and the sugar and the grain and the cookie could keep you awake. So you might want to sort of retool, rethink, and use some scientific methodology when you pick your late night snack. So let's look at how this all wraps up and see if we can get some good snacks sort of recommended to us. It says, a good rule of thumb then is this: if you must eat before bed, keep it light. All right, yeah, that is definitely a conclusion that we can all agree on, I think, at the end of this 2-day article. A good rule of thumb. A rule of thumb is sort of just like a basic rule that you might want to follow. We're saying it's a rule of thumb as if you're measuring something using your thumb. It's not entirely accurate. It won't be true all the time to all the people, but generally it's good advice, right? So a good rule of thumb is if the light starts to turn yellow, you should slow down rather than trying to speed up and rush through it. If you're really close to the light or there's an emergency, you might do that. But a good rule of thumb is that yellow means slow down, not speed up. I think most people would agree on that if they're trying to conduct themselves safely on the road. So that's just kind of a common thing. I know here in Taiwan in the summertime, a good rule of thumb is if you go out in the hours after lunch, bring an umbrella, because it often rains around 2 p.m. in Taiwan during the summer. Not always, but it's just a good, wise thing to do. So let's look at a good, wise bit of advice. It says, if you must eat before bed, keep it light. We're not talking about the color. We're not saying like white foods are better than dark red foods or anything. We're talking about sort of the content of the food. And we get some really good examples coming up next.
Right. For example, we're saying a few nuts like walnuts or almonds or something like that are also a slice or two of lean meat. Lean meat, of course, is meat that does not have a lot of fat in it. Or even just a glass of herbal tea. Some people say herbal. I think they tend to say herbal more in the UK, and in the US we tend to say herbal. And yes, indeed, you could have a glass of herbal tea that would give your body the best chance to relax, allowing you to sink into a deep, peaceful sleep. Okay, so here we're talking about lean meat, as we said. I'm not in the habit of eating lean meat. I was a vegetarian for many years. Not really so much anymore, but still, this seems kind of strange to me to eat a piece of lean meat before going to bed.
Gonna have a few almonds, some turkey, and a glass of herbal tea, and then go to... Yeah, it's not the most appetizing midnight snack, is it?
Kind of weird. I tend to actually avoid food before I go to bed. I kind of have a rule of thumb not to eat anything after 7 p.m.
That's a good rule.
And then go to bed at about 10 or 11. I'm an early sleeper. I don't like to stay up too late. Lots of people stay up, my goodness, all the way to midnight or 1 or 2 in the morning. But yeah, getting to bed earlier could be another way to get a good night's sleep. But we're not talking about that today. We're talking about the effect of food on our sleep patterns. And yes, herbal tea, of course, is a kind of tea that has herbs and spices in it, cinnamon in it or something like that.
Yeah, maybe made from flowers. The main thing would be no caffeine. There wouldn't be any caffeine in it. Of course, there's natural caffeine in black tea, green tea, oolong tea, pu'er tea, all those different types. So herbal tea will be caffeine-free. And in the same way, you would probably think to avoid coffee or Coca-Cola or things with caffeine. Tea would definitely be in there. And lean meat. So lean means low fat, right? So we're thinking turkey, chicken, avoid the bacon, don't have a hamburger, don't have a big juicy steak or something like that. No pork belly, no lurofan or something before you go to bed. That would be not so good for you. But a bit of turkey or chicken or something light would be okay. But maybe just avoid the snack. I like Roger's rule of thumb. Don't eat after 7 or 8 p.m. if you're planning to go to bed around 10, 11, 12. Give your stomach a few hours to digest, and then hopefully you will have the best sleep possible.
Yep, you can sink into a deep, peaceful sleep. Of course, to sink just means to go down lower and lower into water. So here we're sinking into a deep, peaceful sleep. Indeed, these are some pieces of advice that you could follow if you want to have a good night's sleep. I'm sure all of you have your own remedies for that or your own rules of thumb on how to get some good sleep. But of course, there are other things that you might consider as well. And we're going to discuss those things in our discussion starter in just a couple of seconds. But first, we're going to hear from our Chinese teacher, Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文一开始提到，事实上这些结果与其他近期的资料一致，显示如果你想要一夜好眠，最好在靠近就寝前避免食用那些会给消化系统带来负担的食物。文中是用 consistent 来描述一致的，那它是来自动词 consist。 我们来学习它的字首字根。看到 SIST 这个字根，它可以表达站立、放置或是处于某种状态。而在 consist 这个字当中，它的字首 CON 表示一起， SIST 表示摆放。那把所有的东西摆放在一起来构成整体，我们就可以用这样的方式去联想 consist， 它有组成构成的意思。那么整体会有一致性嘛，所以我们在 consist 后面加上了形容词字尾 ENT 变成 consistent， 就可以描述一贯的、始终如一的或是一致的。这边也补充两个有相同字根的单字。第一个 persist， 它的字首 PER 表示完全地， SIST 表示站立。那如果从头到尾都站在那边，完全不动如山，屹立不摇，这样应该可以联想到 persist， 它有坚持不懈、持续存在的意思。第二个补充 resist， 它的字首 RE 表示反抗， SIST 是指处于某种状态，那么合在一起就是处于反抗的状态，所以 resist 它有抵抗、抗拒的意思。课文第二部分提到了高能量食物以及含糖零食，这些食物会导致血糖迅速升高，限制了身体制造帮助进入睡眠的化学物质。那文中它是用 chemicals that ease the transition into sleep 来表达帮助进入睡眠的化学物质。那么 transition 这个名词它其实就有过度转变的语义。来看看它的字根 IT 的意思是 go， 表示走、行走或是去，像 visit 拜访、orbit 轨道、circuit 环形路线等等，这几个字其实都带有 IT 这个字根。那我们看到在 transition 这个字当中，字首 TRANS 表示 across 穿越贯穿，那么 IT 表示 go 也就是走， ION 是名词字尾，从字面意思来看就是 go across， 所以应该可以联想到 transition 这个字有表达过渡的意思，它可以当名词或动词，表示过渡、转变或转换。顺便补充两个有相同字根的单字，第一个是 initial， 它的字首 IN 表示进入， IT 是走， IAL 是形容词字尾，我们就可以试着联想，从入口开始往里面走进去，那就表示是从起点开始的，所以 initial 这个字就表示开始的、最初的。第二个补充的是 exit， 它的字首 EX 表示向外， IT 是走，所以 exit 它就有出口或离开、退场的意思。好，那以上是今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天单字吧。
Consistent. Robbie's story about what happened was consistent with what Faye told us. Digestive. Cora has a digestive disorder, so she must be very careful about what she eats. Spicy. The waiter warned me that the noodles I ordered would be really spicy. Acid. This medicine can reduce the amount of acid in your stomach. Transition. The transition from being a student to starting a career can be challenging. Lean. As an athlete, Miles tries to eat lots of lean meat and vegetables. Herbal. I recommend you drink some herbal tea to help you with your cold.
Discussion starter starts now.
It's time now for our discussion starter. Here's the question. What is something people can do to help them get a good night's sleep? How does that help?
I'll throw in another one that I've definitely read about and also try to do in my life. One recommendation for getting good sleep is to have a shower and also keep the temperature in your bedroom a little bit cool. This helps by promoting sleep because warmer temperatures make it harder to fall asleep. I mentioned tossing and turning when the room is too hot, so maybe lower the temperature a little bit as you're getting ready for bed, and then just as you're about to try to sleep or sink into your sleep, maybe raise it a little bit. You don't want it too cold all night, but a slightly cooler temperature at first, at least in the bedroom, can definitely promote sleep.
Sounds like a great piece of advice there. One step people can take to help them sleep well is perhaps to drink a little bit of water before you go to bed. Lots of people would say, no, you don't want to drink water before you go to bed because you'll wake up in the middle of the night and have to pee. And nobody wants to do that, but I guess they say that if you drink some water before you go to bed, it helps your blood not be so thick so that you won't wake up in the morning and have a stroke or something like that. It's a good idea to keep some water in your system to a certain degree.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, so please make sure you join us again next time. For all of us here, I am Mike.
I am Roger.
See you next time.